2, and this is the regular board meeting for the Truckee Downer Public Utility District. Could we get a roll call, please?
Sure. We heard from Director Morrell that she would be late. So Director Randall?
Yeah.
And Director Bender is absent. Vice President Laliotis?
Here.
President Finn?
Here. And as you are willing and able, please join us for the pledge. Director Lewis?
Sure.
Ready
to begin.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Brian, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
Thank you very much. Did we hear anything from Director Bender? Just
Have not yet.
okay. Public comment. So this is time that is set aside for the public to comment on anything that is not on the agenda. If it's regarding an agendized item, it should be brought up at the time that that item is being considered. Do we have any public comment tonight that is on something that's not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, and then we're on the internets. Okay, very good. Brings us to director update. Directors, does anybody have an update for us this evening?
No, but I want to comment.
Okay, it's the same.
I just want to mention to fellow board members that I've been approached by a lot of people on the rates and what's going on, and wanted to see, I think when we do the public hearing, and I think it's the 16th, would like to see that we do kind of a basic level presentation on, things such as, what is a typical house size and how much, will these rates, cost, per month or year. Things like, how do we come across the $100 surcharge? I just think there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of misunderstanding, and I just wanted to see how the board felt. Maybe we agendize this item for next month so that the board can give direction to staff on how to make a presentation. I'm thinking, water rates 101, the most basic level, so that, I presume the room is potentially going to be packed with people. And I realize that all the answers, are on the website, but people typically will not go to the website. So if we can make this as informative and as easy as to understand, I think it's in our ratepayers' interest and the board's interest.
Thank you, Director Randall. Are you going to do a respond, Brian? I saw you making a move. I don't want to.
No, just so staff has clarification, the public hearing is scheduled for November 19th.
19th. Sorry.
Is the board looking to have an intermediate workshop presentation on the 5th in preparation for the 19th, or on the 19th at the public hearing, enhance the presentation as you pointed out?
That's up to the board, and I'm not looking for a workshop, but just because this is not an agendized item for this evening, so it can't be discussed. But if the board's interested, an agenda item that allows us to discuss how to develop the presentation for the 19th.
So I could recommend either the board make a motion for staff to agendize at the next meeting, or President Finn can request that staff agendize at the next meeting an additional presentation, or we could take the feedback and requests to ensure that our public hearing presentation includes the water rates 101 and examples of kind of different classes in our rate structure and how the impacts. We can do either one, or we can do both.
I don't have a problem. You just want to direct staff to agendize it next month.
Okay. So it would be sort of like a dry run of
Well,
public hearing, so we can see how.
basically,
Here
you know, I'm sure you're getting questions about it and, things like, you know, why are we charged $100? And I know the rates are different. Why are we charged $100? What does that go into? That's not based on usage. Explain those kinds of things. The zone charge, why do I have to pay more? Because I live at the top of Tahoe Donner and someone down here doesn't. I mean, I have the answers to those questions. I'm sure fellow board members do, but the general public doesn't. And like I, reiterated, I know it's on the website, but typically the average citizen is not going to go to the website. So if we can make the public hearing as seamless as possible and easy and get those questions out, things like, if you live in Tahoe Donner, a typical house of 1,800 square feet and 4 people, your rate's probably going to be about $8 to $9 additionally a month. Where's the money going to? Well, the district is over 50 years old. There's aging infrastructure. How are we going to pay for that? We're still going to give you water service no matter what, but we need to address those simple, basic concepts.
No, I absolutely agree with that. And I made the assumption myself that that would be part of the public hearing. But if we want to make sure, if we want to check in with staff before the public hearing and sort of have like a little dry run and understand really what's going to be presented at the public hearing
Well,
more thoroughly.
I wasn't necessarily asking for a dry run, but give them some directions based on, comments you're getting from the public and what they don't understand about the rates.
Okay, and do we want that to be an agenda's item before we get to the,
That's definitely before the public hearing.
yeah, okay, so, okay, I mean, directing staff, yes, but how are we gonna?
Well, what
Okay,
we're
got it.
doing is we are the eyes and ears of the community too. We hit
Yeah.
different people and let's let staff know what we're hearing.
Okay, got it. That makes a lot of sense to me. So it's an opportunity for the board to tell staff about what we're
To
hearing.
help with
and
their
how we can-
presentation.
Yeah, so that we can address what we're hearing and make sure that's all covered. Okay, I got it. I'll chat with you after this meeting. How's that? Okay. Any director comment from? That's very good, very good. I also do not have a director's comment, other than I did attend the actual quarterly CTA meeting on Friday. And since we're having a CTA workshop, I'll probably have an opportunity at that time to make a slightly longer comment. Okay. I wonder what happened to our director. Not nothing. Okay. In which case, we're moving on to the consent calendar. Do we have any public comment on consent tonight?
No public comment.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Directors, do we have any comments or questions or something that we need pulled from consent tonight? No,
Make a motion to
Very good.
approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
very good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Fantastic. Did you, I didn't even say nay.
Say nay.
An aye it is. And that brings us straight to our first workshop item this evening, an update on the Climate Transformation Alliance with Mr. Poncelet.
Good evening, President Finn, members of the board. This is workshop item 11. District has a long history of environmental stewardship and working to create a sustainable, resilient environment for our greater community. Took those words out of one of our strategic plan objectives. CTA was founded in 2021 by the district, town of Truckee, and the airport, known as the governing partners. And the goal was to work collaboratively to understand the impacts of climate change, convene and engage with public, private, and nonprofit leaders, support local efforts to adapt and to mitigate impacts, and create a sustainable funding source for CTA and projects. That's the mission up there. It was in the staff report. I won't read it all, but I did underline, key phrases that I think are important. Collaborate, reduce regional GHG emissions, engage for understanding, identify projects, funding from public and private sources, and communicating. And so all what the agency and the members have been doing. And the vision is the Truckee North Lake Tahoe region, and that is pointing out the region that CTA does cover will be net carbon neutral by 2045 through a combination of greenhouse gas emissions reductions and carbon storage in natural lands supported by collective member action. And a simpler way to say that might be the board's net carbon initiative, because it touches on similar themes. This is the list of members that have signed the charter and are actively participating in the CTA. And it ranges from many of the local agencies, the ski resorts and the big ski resorts, public-private organizations and agencies working in the community. So CTA's accomplishments since inception in 2021 include development of the agency charter, mission statement, and core values, and attracting the 27 organizations and individuals to join. We just saw over 200 people are on the CTA listserv, so they're starting to develop some reach in the community. They have a robust website listed up there, climatetransformationalliance.org. And on there is dashboards of policies and projects and clearinghouse and trackers and testimonials and, information to engage people. They've been doing quarterly meetings since inception and very strong attendance at those meetings. I think the one on Friday was close to 100, if not more. And member action. A lot of greenhouse gas inventories have come out of this effort for local agencies. I believe Tahoe City PUD did one along with some others. Seed funding for projects, including the North Star CSD biomass project. It was a small contribution to that big project, but it still was important to it moving forward. And then, starting to develop a project pipeline for future funding. In terms of some of the funding history since 2021, initially the three governing partners were putting $100,000 a year total into the organization, split evenly the three ways. They did kind of match that funding and grow that with $50,000 in development funds from the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation in 2023. They got $30,000 in project seed funding from the airport district in 23-24. That was part of the biomass funding. And then the big one was a $160,000 grant from California's Regional Resilience Program through Nevada County, I believe, in 2024. And that has offset the district's contribution for the last almost 18 months into mid next year. And if you look at it in terms of what the governing partners have put in versus what they've brought outside, it's more than a 2-to-1 ratio of what got in and what ended up coming out. So the CTA governing partners had a strategic planning session on September 29th. President Finn, General Manager Wright, and myself were in attendance at that. We discussed future and next steps for CTA. There was consensus of building upon success in convening and engaging, because that's what's unique to CTA, the need to continue to grow relationships with outside funding sources, the need to continue to create a project pipeline, kind of shovel ready, so to speak, to be prepared for future funding. And then financially, a goal of CTA to be financially sustainable by itself in 4 years. And within those leading up to that 4-year period, a request for ongoing governor partner funding that breaks out by year as listed up on the slide there. And these are intended to be up to, not to exceeds, because if they're more successful in securing funding, then that would offset the financial requirements of the governing partners. There is no direct fiscal impact associated with this workshop item. CTA is currently funded in the FY25 budget with a combination of direct CTA funding in the GL account listed there for $36,400, and then the board's net carbon reduction initiative GL listed there, which has $40,000 into it. And with that, the recommendation is to receive this report and provide input and direction to staff, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you for that presentation and everything that you included in our packet. I think it was pretty thorough. And the reason I asked for this, because I want some just feedback from my other board members. We are likely to be asking for the $16,000 that might show up on an agenda approval for CTA funding in the future, and I want to understand how you guys are feeling about the endeavor.
I'm completely supportive, and don't have any questions at this point.
Thank you.
No, I think, between you and Stephen, I think we've been fairly transparent about what this district's role is and how we're supporting and how we're engaging in this with the Alliance, and as well as the financial support. I think, as long as we continue to receive updates from you and Stephen and kind of what the Alliance is doing and how our money is being spent. I think that's the most important thing.
Okay. Well, thank you all for that. I just want to sort of reiterate a little bit that we are at 5 years in, seems like a long time. It's not, we have done actually a lot, but I still feel like we're just getting our footing under us as far as sort of clarity of what our next steps are and how we can really leverage, now that we have convened, leverage it for projects being accomplished, like real physical things to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in this. And I appreciate y'all's support as we go through this, which is, it's not easy. And also there's a high probability that we will get more grant funding by July, which is when we would be making this ask, because that's when the current grant funding runs out, because California did pass Prop 4 last year, which frees up, that was the climate bond, and it frees up a lot in the number of billions for this kind of work. So we will be applying for that. If we receive that, these numbers will change for the better. We will be contributing less for the upkeep of the CTA. So I just wanted to share that bit with you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, and we are zooming through this meeting, unfortunately. It's time for budget, and our item number 12 this evening is the budget fiscal year 26 and 27 workshop number 3, and Mr. Salmon will be presenting for us.
Good evening, President Finn, members of the board. It's a great day. We're going to be talking about budget. Pretty exciting. This is our agenda. We're going to Essentially, we're going to talk all things budget, soup to nuts. This is the main workshop for the budget cycle, and try and cover the tips of the waves and a little detail on a few things, and then certainly open to any questions as we go along or at the end. So thanks for listening. Back in June, the board approved a budget cycle with the following key dates. The workshops 1, 2, and 3 are listed here. And then the public hearing and action item is scheduled for November 5th to approve budget for 26 and 27. And then we did shift also the electric rates ordinance, and then we shifted the water one to November 19th. So we don't have quite the world's longest meeting on the 5th. So starting off with some key assumptions and economic updates. I do use a fair amount of acronyms, kind of the symbols for A for actual, B for budget is common, F for forecast, year over year is common. CAGR is used quite a bit. Compounded annual growth rate, that's just compounding interest on any number, any item that you're compounding. BLS, Federal Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and a few others. Our fiscal year is the same as our calendar year. The staff report included, 8 attachments, so that information is available. And then as you know, I like this chart at the pie wheel of all the many moving parts and pieces, capital, operating, IT, regulatory, reserves, administration, of course, everything focused around our mission, values, and goals, with full transparency, of course. Refresher for the mission for the very small percentage that don't look at our website and are aware of this. Won't read it. Reliable and high quality, responsive at the lowest practical cost. I did want to touch a little bit on our budget versus the federal and state government. It's pretty popular in the news right now. Federal and state governments have a much more rigid budget that's bound by legal mandates, mandatory spending programs, and statutory requirements. They're also subject to a high level of political influences. The Truckee-Donner Public District is focused on having a revenue requirement, the outflow that meets our mission and goals that I just showed you. It's driven by that. And then our rate revenues primarily are the inflow to pay for that revenue requirement. Very similar to what the HDR consultant with our COSA talks about revenue requirement. We're in alignment. Also important to note, the district here does not receive property tax dollars. Many of the other districts in the area and throughout the state receive property tax dollars. We do not. And then also a reminder, all spends over $15,000 require board approval. Why some agendas are longer than others. Few inflation figures. First from the on the left, it's the 1-year inflation through August. September hasn't released yet. It was delayed due to the government shutdown. And then the second number to the right of the first number is the 5-year compounded annual growth inflation rate. So for the United States, the current inflation rate year over year through August is 2.9, right at 3%. And for the 5 years, it's 4.5. San Francisco is at 2.7 for the year and 3.8 for the 5-year average. And then for the United States electricity, 6.2 is the year over year through August figure, and 6.7 is the inflation rate for electricity in the United States. Those are very high numbers compared to if you look 10 years or look back before 5 years. So definitely upticking there. FRED, the St. Louis arm of Federal Reserve Economic Data, FRED, ceased publishing the specific figure in San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward, but through December, the year over year was 11.2 and 11.8 was the 5-year compounded annual growth rate. Not directly tied to the economy, but it does relate, and it's often talked about water cooler talk. This is fuel prices. The red line is California. This is 5 years of fuel prices. The red line is California, the green line, Nevada, and average fuel price for the United States is in the blue. California is currently at about 1.6%, $1.60, or 51% higher than the national average. It'd be greater if you excluded California from that national average. Covering some of the key assumptions in our budget. There's been no material change really since one or two, the first two workshops. Obviously, continuing to focus on our mission, the values and goals. Strategic initiatives are funded consistent with the current budget we're operating in at about $160,000 a year. Power cost is budgeted at fiscal year 26 at 14.4 million. I did cover that extensively in workshop 2. I'll hit the tips of the waves again because it's an important assumption. That is down about $1 million from budget 25. So great news there. Rate of pay increases consistent with the MOU that we're currently under contract with. So we're budgeting for the entire company, entire district, 4.0 in 26 and 27. Inflation assumption is 4%, unless, there's exceptions here and there. Medical insurance renewal was at 4.5. I'll cover that later. I'll cover pension, but that's an important cost assumption. Wildfire vegetation management contractor costs are at 2.1 million. That's 3 to 4% over 25 budget. And then another 4% for 27. Personnel is at 81 FTEs for 26 and 27. I'll cover that later here in a bit. Current budget's 83. And no new debt issuances for 26 or 27. So we're going to dive into the electric utility first, and then we'll cover water. Then we'll cover capital expenditures, personnel, overheads, and financial master plan. So this is a new slide, a new bit of information. This is kind of the budget for the electric utility for 2026 on one page, and the keynotes. All right. On the left, if we focus on the left side of the line there, it's a sources and uses presentation style, which is very common in government entities and special districts and those type things, type entities. And we have 49 million in sources and 54 million in uses, a net of 4.6 million outflow. Well, it's not a balanced budget. Well, it is a balanced budget. So what happens at a lot of entities, they'll just show a use of reserve funds as a source of funds, right? And so the net down at the bottom is zero. So sure, that's a balanced budget, but it's not a balanced budget from a cash flow standpoint. So this is showing you that same information just on a cash flow basis. Our net outflow is 4.6 million. If you go to the right, how do we get to that 4.6 million? The bottom right quadrant, that's by fund. So operating is up, rate reserve is up, capital reserve is negative. So we're using capital reserve funds. Why are we doing that? Because at the top, you'll see that we're spending 18 million budgeted for 2026. And we've built up our capital reserves. I'll show that chart later. It's actually a chart. And you'll see that we've built up reserves because we've had delays in capital projects. We collected funds anticipating expending those expenditures, doing those projects. They got delayed. We're now executing on them. And on the far right, bottom right, is the same information, the net use by fund for each of the funds for 2027. You see, we start building back up the capital reserve. We draw down on vehicle reserves because there's not as much spending on electric, because if I ordered it today, I may or may not get it in 27. The net change for all funds cash flow is a positive 799,000 in 27. So this is the more traditional style we've seen here at the district. This is comparing 2025, our current budget, with 2026. Revenues are for 26 or 45.7 million. They're up 6%. We did not have a 6% rate increase budgeted here. We have a 5% rate increase budgeted. As you know, we've covered that in electric rate workshops. The average rate increase for 26 is 5%, but we get to 6% by customer growth. So we also add almost 1% in customer growth and then a little bit of demand growth. Overall, total expenses are up 3.1. I'm going to be covering that in more detail because that's a little misleading on the top page here. Investment income is conservatively budgeted the same as last year. And then the net, let's see, and then the net capital related cash flows, I'll cover that on the next page. Last year was 10.2 outflow and 12.8 is for 2026. We do have a little bit of rate reserve funding. We can fund less there. We did draw down, but as you know, we have had opportunities to refund the rate reserve over the last couple of years, as well as because we're budgeting less absolute power cost in 2026, we do not have to have, per our policy, a higher amount in the rate reserve itself. So we benefit from that. Also using 450,000 in AB 32, Assembly Bill 32 reserve funds, consistent with last year. We also have incoming funds similar. I should also point out we do have budgeted 197,000 in vehicle reserve fleet rentals for electric utility. We don't have any for the water, but on electric we do, because of the extreme amount of lead time for ordering vehicles and the needs of the crew, we do anticipate the need to lease a vehicle instead of purchase a vehicle. So that would qualify as a vehicle reserve type expenditure. So that helps offset having to raise rates. So this is the detail of the net capital related expenditures. We have debt service at the top. So about 430,000. Capital expenditures last year were budgeted at 2.5, this year 18.3. Last year using 5.2 in reserve, this year 6 million. And in 2025, we're hoping to utilize the debt proceeds. There's a couple ways we can go about that. So that should be gone by the end of the year as the plan. And then this page is the same information just for 26 and 27 instead of 25 and 26. And essentially we have for revenues, 5% revenues growth through rate change and average, and then just under 1% in customer growth and just a very small amount of demand growth. And then expenses are growing basically at the 4% inflation rate assumption. And then capital expenditures for 27 are at 14.5 million. And we're going to cover capital expenditures later in detail. In 27, we do not use nearly as much actually, we fund capital reserves, 800,000. And I mentioned earlier, it was up about $1 million, and that's because we also have investment income. Okay, so diving into purchase power, on the far right is 26 and 27 budget. And you'll see that those blue bars are less than the blue bars in the middle, which are 24 and 25's budget. We've been returning that cost savings, which is the forecast 25 and actual for 24 through, we've been returning that back to our customers through the purchase power cost adjustment quarterly. We reset that, and those have been, for the most part, I think all but one quarter were credits on customers' bills. So we did a pretty detailed analysis with Jared and others' help to arrive at the 26 and 27 figures. And we do not have the infamous crystal ball to know exactly what power costs are going to do. So we're using current trends. And then we escalate it in 27 for the 4%. I would like to point out my second favorite chart of the day. This is kilowatt hours per account per month. And in the circle is the summer months and shoulder season month of May. You'll see the gray dots are 2025, and they're at or below the last 4 years, previous 4 years. So on a per account basis, kilowatt hour usage is not going sky high. A lot of things influence that. The types of weather we have do influence kWh even in the summer. And then, of course, efficiencies, perhaps conservation programs, and the efficiencies of appliances and other things like that are helping that, or at least offsetting the EV usage, charging. In the winter months, that's why the dots are higher. It's obviously a lot more heating going on. And the red dots are 2023 when we had a big winter, big cold winter. I did point out here the EV impact of demand is not reflected anywhere on this chart. So this is kWh, the volume of electricity, and some engineer in the room could probably explain the difference better than I, but kW is definitely different than kWh, and kW is not reflected in this. So kW continues to grow here at the district across the United States and California. This is a little tight for this page, sorry, but this is the detailed budget by power source. As you know, the majority of our power comes through UAMPS, and various sources are detailed analyzed for the budget process. Horse Butte Wind, Red Mesa, our solar, are two of the bigger ones. Nebo, natural gas, and then of course Horse Butte Wind. Stampede is a little more local, and then everything transmits through NV Energy, and there's a cost for that. So looking at operating expenses, bottom right, 3.1%, great. Let's move on to the next slide, but it's not so easy. We do have, that's influenced by the purchase power of $1 million, 6.7% less in 26 than 27. So looking by function, simplest way to look at it, board of directors, general manager, administrative services, conservation, electric operations, the big one, and then information technology. And so the percentages draw down are very, very a fair amount there. And then conservation, and I'm going to cover this on the next slide, conservation and electric ops are the two larger increases. So what's going on? The 20.4, the 2 million at the bottom is the change excluding purchase power on the previous page. Okay, so isolating out purchase power, what does everything else add up to? And these are the core changes for the electric utility and operating expenses. We had a large increase in conservation expense budget, and that's to align our conservation expenditures with our revenues through one of the assembly bills. I forget the number that it shows up on your bill, the 2.85% that's required to be spent on conservation. So we need to make sure that that's in alignment with that. We've overspent in past years, underspent a few years. We're getting budget kind of reset with that 2.85. We do have an additional position. I'll cover that in a bit. And this is electric utility share. Then we have the electric, or the overall rate of pay impacts is a little over $1 million. We are dropping a third crew, which totals 821,000. And then we did split a position into two positions. That adds 343. All vendor expenses, inflation at 4% is about 265,000 plus various areas of materials and supplies that electric ops identified as necessary, added another 97. That totals 362. We added storm damage and tools. Tools were woefully underfunded for the size operation we have, and just deferred, instead of deferred maintenance, it's just deferred refurbishing of tools that wear out. They're still using tools that are 15, 20 years old. We need to refurbish that. So up that budget for 26 and 27 to get caught up on that. We do anticipate FERC and other legal and study costs necessary, particularly with our renewal of the NV Energy transmission agreement upcoming. So we bumped some dollars in there, as well as professional services, inspection services, and civil work. We're very minorly budgeted, and we'd like to have those in budget so that we don't have to tell the board we want to do this, but we don't know where the budget is. We'd rather say we have the budget and please, here's what we're going to do. So again, these items would come to the board before they're approved, but we'd have to, go through the acid test, so to speak. So those are the main drivers of electric utility operating expenses, which is about a third of the electric utilities budget overall. So a third capital, a third operating expenses, and a third purchase power. Be remiss without reminding one of the key operating expenses we have, very important, is wildfire vegetation management. I covered that briefly earlier. This is a historical trend since 2000. And the growth rate there is 7.2% over the last 5 years. And then for 26, we're upping it to $62,000. The 2.1 million is effectively $12 per month per account. So we're spending some real money on wildfire veg management. Didn't need to tell anybody, didn't already know, but a reminder. So those were the main things for the electric utility. So similar format here for the water sources and uses. We have 24.4 million in sources. Uses is 26.8 million. A net outflow of about 2.4 million. That includes 9.7 million in CapEx. We're going to use 2.75 million in capital reserve. And that's why the net use at the bottom left is 2,357,000. So rolling down the various funds, 2.6 capital reserve drops to 2.6. And facility fees are up 286. Those are the main movers there. That's with facility fees. And then in the next year, in 2027, we do increase the operating reserve, which is important. You need to have that balance at the policy of 50% of operating expenses. So we needed to do that. We're using some more capital reserve, and I'll cover all this in the financial master plan toward the end. We start building back up the vehicle reserve. Water received quite a few new vehicles in 2025, and so a little bit in 26, I think. And then facility fees, we actually have a project in 27 identified for facility fees, so there's some usage there. So this is 2025 and 26 from an income and other activities standpoint. Debt service, let's see. First things first, 22.4 million in revenues is up 1.9 million or 9% to 2025 budget. Well, the average rate increase is 6.5, as you know from the Prop 218 mailer, as well as the two workshops we've had so far on water rates. So that has to do with the budget for 25 was conservative and was done in 2023. So things have changed and water use changes. And so I'm looking more at what are current trends and revenues and 3-year averages of water use as far as the volume side of things to determine what the budget 26 figure needs to look like. So basically you're refining budget all the time. And so that's why the percent change is greater, but the actual, there's also been customer growth. And so just wanted to cover that. The forecast against forecast for 26, forecast 25, that's a typo upper right. Forecast 25 to budget 26 is 7.4. And that would be about 6.5, and then customer growth, and then just other mix changes between commercial, residential, et cetera, et cetera. Our debts, I'll cover that in a little bit. So the debt service is about 2 million, but there's some offsets, and I'll talk about that in a little bit here. Covered that. This is 26 and 27. And essentially 4%, you have your 6.5% average rate increase anticipated and recommended, plus customer growth of 0. A little bit, 0.4, 0.5. On the operating expense side, we currently drafted slightly less in power supply. I'm hoping that'll stick. We're hearing a lot of chatter, cover that in a bit as well on Liberty. But at Liberty, fortunately, is not a large portion of our overall power supply cost. That's the power supply is the cost to run wells, pumps, and wells and pumps primarily. So the key changes here are lower power supply, rent expense went up, effective overall pay increase or pay change from 25 to 26, 4%, 5.5 versus budget this is the change, so it's 5.5, and then vendor expense inflation of 230,000. So a lot less moving parts and pieces on the on that. There are current rate case hearing on a 21% Liberty rate increase. I don't think it's going to be super material though to the big picture of power supply for water. Capital expenditures. So on the right is a graphic showing the 10-year capital improvement plan is 135 million for electric and 88 for water. Distilling that to a per year average of 13.5 for water and 13.5 for electric and 8.4 for water. If you don't already know this, utilities are a capital intensive business. They do have a long-term benefit and life and benefits to the system. And we do have regulatory and environmental impacts impacting things as well. Should have added also modernization of the grid. I've been itching to do this, so I did it for this presentation. Just an inflation perspective, the accounting records are based on historical costs. Drives a lot of people crazy. Not me, but so the book value of all our assets for electric is 107 million and 158 million for water. But that's at cost. So, 10 years ago, something that was 100,000 is, closer to 200,000 now. So I had a napkin calculation based on just basic financials, dividing accumulated depreciation by depreciation to get an age and applying inflation there, but it was too rough. I didn't like the results. So in the last 36 hours with Tracy Pearson's help in accounting, we were able to data dump the entire fixed asset ledger and do some analysis. It was a fun project, a couple thousand rows of information. But once you get the math working, so anyway, looking at the age of all of our assets that are in service and applying an inflation value of 3.5% to all of those items and the appropriate, compounding CAGR of 3.5, whether it was 10 years or 20 years, every line item, we get a much, much different value. And then we also looked at the average life of all of our assets and 26 years for electric, 38 for water. So you divide those number of years into the current value of your assets. You get that's an understanding of the type level of capital expenditure just to maintain your system, right? Just to sustain. And we talked quite a bit about that with the capital improvement plan for water consultant. Talked quite a bit about that when he was presenting Dowell, I think it was. I forgot his name. But so when you do that math, Waters needs to spend 8.2 million a year at current prices to stay even. Electric's is 9.9. And the electric drives up greater than water. One, it's a shorter useful life overall because pipe in the ground lasts longer essentially than the electric assets overall. And then also electric has quite a bit of assets that have fully depreciated. So they're not showing up in depreciation at all. And so the net book value on them is 0, but they're in service. So they have a lot of really old stuff. So does water. Hope I explained that well enough. So this is Electric's 26 and 27 capital plans by kind of the way we segregate things. You got the overall electric, and then we have information technology, 890,000 this year, 519 next year, and then vehicle expenditures. This is water, 8.4 and 8.6, and then about 700,000 for IT and 300,000 in 27, and then vehicle expenditures in 26, but not in 27. Sorry, this is a little small, but I'll hit the primary items. This is 10-year. This is electric capital projects, 26 and 27 on the right. The big numbers on this page is kind of the third item, which is system reliability, capacity, and wildfire mitigation, rebuild and hardening of approximately 6 miles of overhead. So this is system hardening and updating and wildfire mitigation for 6 miles of overhead power line. Costs us $6 million this year, almost 6.2 next year. On the next page, in 2026, we are completing the Martis Valley substation rebuild modernization, which is underway. So we're going to plan to finish that in 26. That's a component of why we're using reserve funds. We have collected in our rates and built up in capital reserve because we didn't spend it yet. That project was delayed. So now we're spending that. And then at the bottom, same thing. We're spending plan to spend 2.7 million, 2,750,000 in 2026 and planning in 2027 for the next phase for our long often talked about SCADA reliability improvement project, strip fiber improvement. I also have placeholders in here for land and building using capital reserve funds or other funds of 2.5. So just basically a placeholder, but a planning figure. So we have something. Again, that would come out of reserves if we did execute on it. So moving on to water specific projects, pump station replacements, 4.7 million. Pipeline replacement, 2.3 million in 2026. Tank rehab, 800,000 in 26, 450,000 in 2027. Other water projects include, these are all pretty small dollars. That middle column is a 10-year total, so don't be alarmed. Moving on to IT in 26 and 2026 in particular, we have hyper-convergent infrastructure replacement, another word for servers. So massive, big server upgrade project. I'm sure will only be down a couple hours, so that's good news. And then GIS update upgrade of 400,000. Those are kind of two looming large projects that will be big improvements here at the district. Obviously, both of those are critical to everything, any and everything we do here. I think there's some radios in there too. Those are important. This is the capital spend for fleet. The first thing I would want to point out is that this is the capital plan budget plan. This is not exactly necessarily how things will get executed. These are the things that are identified that need to be replaced, but the conversations will be what are we replacing them with and when exactly. A couple of quick metrics on, I'll get into that later actually, sorry. So there's five, I don't know, six, but there's 5 Cherokees, 2014, 2015, that are well overdue for replacement. Those are large figures to replace a Jeep Cherokee, but we're not sure if they're going to be EVs or something different. So we're just trying to be conservative with the budget figures. Those are larger amounts. Again, all of these type procurements go through a full vetting process internally. Then they go through the process with the board and a staff report and recommendation and further discussions. So this is the plan through our budget. There's also a dump truck, spool trailer, a Sherman Riley something, wire puller. And then in 27, it's all electric. Hoping to spend the money. So that, my preference is 210 replacement for that digger derrick, and the one below it, that needs to happen very soon, those orders. Hi, Brian. Otherwise we won't get them in 27. So that's capital expenditures, personnel. Sorry, the readable version of the org chart, 5 pages, 4 or 5 pages is in your staff report. There's budget 25 is 83 FTEs, 26 and 27 are 81. And how we go from 83 to 81, we split an electric utility director position I mentioned. We dropped a third crew. We've never staffed a third crew nor been able to operate one. So we're recommending we do not budget and only budget 2 crews. We've never operated with 3 crews that I'm aware of. And then we are recommending and having budget a HR coordinator position. So that's the net of 81. I would point out this is closer to head count. There is overtime in electric and water that's not in these figures just for consistency. We've always excluded that. If you included overtime, you would add about 3.4 for electric and 1.3 for water. All right. I'm going to go really fast on overhead. Try to anyway, because we've covered this in previous workshops. These are the tips of the waves of overhead. 11.2 in labor overhead, it's the main one. Transportation overhead is our other big one on the scale, but it's 1.8 million. And so for every productive payroll hour, there's 91%, for every dollar of productive payroll, there's 91 cents of labor overhead added. And I'll cover those components in a minute. Well, here they are. So again, labor overhead's 11.2 million. It's 48% of gross wages, 91% of overhead rate. And that's because non-productive labor is part of the labor overhead. That's VASH, I call it vacation, admin, sick, holiday. We did add 2 holidays. I had to factor that in. Payroll taxes is big, and then pension, I'll cover on the next slide. Our medical dental is right at 3 million. And that renewal is at 4.5, well below industry averages. Covered California said 10.3 a couple of months ago. With what's going on at a federal level, they may be sending revised notices. That's what I'm hearing. PERS Gold renewed at 10.6. So we came in well below that, which was awesome. We're also saving quite a bit in workers' comp insurance due to a very, very good safety record, which causes us to have a low X mod. It's now at 0.68. Pension costs are 35% of the 91% overhead rate. And let's see, contribution rates are essentially flat, 7.75 by the employee for PEPRA, 8% for the classics, about 15% for the employer on that. And then the unfunded actuarial liability. So over time, since Classic was here, or we participated in Classic, the company and or employees did not contribute enough to the pension benefit they were going to receive. So there's an unfunded actuarial liability. Should also add perhaps investment returns weren't as great as anticipated. That impacts it as well. Our percent funded went from 72%. I covered this in the last board meeting. I believe our percent funded went from 72 to 74. So it did improve slightly. So that was good news. But anyway, our actuarial liability, that's a real hard cash payment every July of 1.8 million in 2027 and 1.6 in 26. These are the components of labor overhead. Transportation overhead includes the cost of fleet operation, repairs, fuel costs, insurance, and depreciation. We have about 118 fleet units. That includes the 118 fleet, physical units, which equates to 247 maintenance and repair units, MRUs. So that's a vehicle repair and maintenance industry calculation, industry standard thing for the maintenance world. And so while we have 118 fleet units, it's 247 when you look at it on an MRU. So essentially a trailer, we have 14 of them, is a 0.6 MRU. We have generators. We have 28 of those. That's included in this because we maintain them in the fleet world. And then those are a 1.2 MRU. A Cherokee that I mentioned earlier is a 1-to-1. Right? But a digger derrick is a 1 to 4.5 and covered trailer. Current average age of our fleet is 9.2. We like to flip them at 10. So we're right on the cusp there. It's not a young fleet. Probably younger than some utilities though. Budget is up about $192,000, 12%. I am recommending in the budget is a fuel costs uptick for the CARB regulations that are continuing to drive California fuel prices, as well as the potential or the announced closure of 2 refineries. Did hear about another fire too, so who knows where that's going to end up. But if California loses 2 refineries, 1 Northern Cal and 1 Southern Cal, that will definitely impact. I do hear rumblings of negotiations in Sacramento, but we'll see. The conservative thing to do is budget for that. We are going to dive into the world of studded tires. That has a cost impact. Depreciation went up. This is specific to fleet. And then insurance went up as well there. The overhead rate went up a bit more because it's at 22.21. And that's charged out per labor hour to the applicable labor hours that are charged, and that includes capital, okay? But it doesn't include departments that don't have hours where they're utilizing the vehicle. So we had not refined where the labor hours were charged in many years. So with the team, we went through and just kind of weeded out areas and added a couple where hours needed to be appropriately charged of transportation overhead. So anyway, there was fewer hours. So when you divide fewer hours into the number, you get a higher overhead rate, or yeah, transportation overhead rate. Administrative overhead, construction overhead covered, rent covered previously. I did want to touch back on debt service. In the financial master plan, I do have additional debt service kicking in 28 for the hypothetical potential of placeholder for some debt issuance for a new facility, or at least starting a new facility. It does not directly affect rates in 26 or 27, or for the 5 years for water. What it would affect is those reserve balances, so they would be better if we didn't have this in there. So that's good news. And then on water, I know this is super small, so I apologize, but I just wanted to remind everyone that there's facility fees covering a portion of that 2 million in water debt service, about 350,000. Then we get about 100,000 in Donner Lake surcharge that pays for debt service as well. And that goes, I think, through 2035, as I recall. And that's for the reason why for that is because the district issued a higher level of debt service than was estimated through the Donner Lake Assessment District. And that's why a surcharge is there. And that continues till that debt service runs out in 2030, 34, 35. Financial master plan. So this is where we take the 26, 27 and extend that out another 8 years, and do a 10-year look at how things are looking based on assumptions. These are those key assumptions: 4% inflation, customer growth 0.9, which is slightly basically take the 5-year average of 1.1, I think, and just detune it a little bit. Same with water at 0.9 and 0.6, because you don't want to be too aggressive. And that's for years 3 through 10, as well as 1 and 2, 26 and 27 for that customer growth. And then our pace right now for electric and water is like 0.4. So 2025 is an economic indicator I just said, okay? 0.4%, well below our averages, historical averages. Cyclical trend or barometer. The rate changes in 26, 27, 5.0 and 5.0 average for electric. And then in the out years, 28 and 29, 4%, and thereafter 3%. And I'll show you on the next couple pages what this all means. Water rates, as you're aware, is 6.5 for 5 years recommended. And then 3.5 is the next 5 years per year. Investment earnings rate, 2.5%. Conservative, hopefully. I know there's a lot of numbers on a page. The center highlighted is what to focus on. Everything else driven off the assumptions, essentially. And the first row of highlight is the operating reserve balance as a percent of operating expenses. Our goal is 50% through district code and our policy. And you can see that every year is right at that 50%. I force that. So operating fund reserve is #1 priority, right? If any reserve is going to fall off, it's something else. That one is a non-negotiable as best as possible, barring something catastrophic happens. But we have to have that in the bank. And then similarly for rate reserve, obviously I'm not budgeting to utilize any. We're not aware of anything that's going to ripple there. We do have a power cost adjustment up and down. It's been down the majority of the last 2 years, but could go the opposite direction here in 2026 because we reset our budget expectations, right? And then capital reserve is in that, it's not 100%, that goal is 100%, and it's 80, 77, 72, 79, 77 through the first 5 years, and then it starts building up quite rapidly thereafter. So those are pretty good balances. And again, that's at 80 and 26 using 6 million. After using 6 million. Water, don't have a rate reserve, so only 2 rows. This is the top row is operating reserve, again prioritized, and it's right at that 50% level every year. Does build up in the out years a little bit, but that's pretty far out to get hung up on. And then capital reserves, the goal is 100%, and you can see that's why it's highlighted in yellow, is well below even 50% for the next 6 years. Hits 50% on the 6th year. And that's with the 6.5% rate increase recommended for the next 5 years. These are the reserve balances. On the top is electric, on the bottom is capital. I forgot to change the word general fund to operating reserve. My apologies. General fund is operating reserve. That's the first bar, first section on each water and electric. And then these are on the same scale, so you have context. And you can see the green bar is the forecasted balance just over, I believe it's 14.1 million for 2025. And then we're going to draw down in 26 according to budget, and then we'll start building it back up in 27. Could have put all 10 years on here, but I didn't think that would be very readable. But it shows you since 23 through 27. The budget years we're seeking approval for next month, or yeah, November 5th. So for electric utility, we have rates, the current rates expire on December 31st of this year at midnight. So we need to have new rates for 26 and 27. We engaged a cost of service and rate consultant, HDR Engineering. We've had those workshops, 2 workshops, I believe, and their scope included net metering updates and a commercial EV rate class and looking at whether we needed to establish that, and we are recommending that. The current recommendation is for 26 is a 5% average increase, and 27 5% average increase. The bar chart is some of our benchmarks, comparators. On the far left is the current rate, the proposed year 1 rate increase, and then Roseville, Lodi, Plymouth Sierra, Liberty, and PG&E on the far right. The yellow Liberty does not include the current rate case of 20.6% rate increase that is currently with CPUC. It was filed a year ago this time, and the CPUC is just now getting to it. And then I'm sure they've been working on it for a year, sorry. And then there's also a 15% rate increase, and that's for a fire, Mountain View Fire, I believe it's called, but that's for 3 years only, 15% for 3 years, but it would be another 15% for 3 years. The 20.6 is a general rate case, in other words, in perpetuity. Perpetuity. I just covered all that. So we did the same thing for water this year. We do 5 years due to a number of items, including Prop 218. And so we engaged the rate consultant, HDR Consulting did this one as well, cost of service analysis and rate study. And we've had 2 workshops on that as well. And then we have a public hearing coming up on November 19th. This is comparators. On the far left in green is the average of all other districts. The next bar over is our current rates in blue. The bright blue is the proposed rate, which is a 6.5% average rate increase. And then going across the page is other water utilities. The 3 hatched light blue hatched ones yeah, hatched is the only word I can come up with. Those do for sure receive property tax dollars as well. So they're subsidized, their rates are subsidized through property taxes. Important to understand. Next steps and recommendations. So next steps after this workshop are the public hearing for budget 26 and 27, as well as an action item to adopt budget, and then public hearing and action to approve electric rates ordinance for 26 and 27. And then that typo, sorry about that. There is a typo right there. On the 19th is a public hearing on water rates and action to adopt water rate ordinance for the years 2026 through 2030. And that is the recommendation this evening. So hopefully that was detailed enough, but not, it certainly wasn't 3 hours details. Yeah, hopefully you feel more educated about budget and the understanding of where the moving parts and pieces are. And with that, I'll turn it back over to President Finn for any public or other questions.
Great place to start. Thank you, Mr. Salmon. Do we have any public information on this item tonight? Any comments? It was a workshop, so I wouldn't necessarily expect there to be any, but seeing none. Board, questions, comments, a sea of numbers here. Some people swim in it more easily than others.
Couple questions, Mike. Vehicles, have we ever looked at leasing versus purchase?
Not that I'm aware of.
Is there any reason why not to look at that?
Leasing typically in the overall total cost of ownership is almost guaranteed to cost you more. We are actually planning to lease some vehicles. As I mentioned on the electric, the 197,000 in costs. So because of the extreme lead time, the long lead time for procurement of electric specialty vehicles and the needs of the electric crews, we are anticipating in budget and recommending that we budget $200,000 for 26 and 27 to bridge the gap between ordering and delivery. And so happy to look at that closer, but my experience in total cost of ownership, it's more expensive. Certainly near term, it can saves a chunk of change. I'm happy to have, talk to, perform an analysis on it, maybe look at a consultant to help me with it.
Okay. Parks and Rec went to leasing vehicles.
Okay.
And so something you could look at
Absolutely.
with them, and it saved money and also had a newer fleet. 10 years seems like very old for a fleet. So something to look at.
One I'd like to add a little bit to what Mike said. We use the terminology like our pooled general use vehicles. Mike talked about there is a placeholder in budget, kind of those Jeep Wrangler, Jeep Cherokee replacements. Those are general use vehicles that may need to go to EVs or zero emission vehicles. And that would definitely be a segment of our fleet that we'd have an opportunity for leasing and things like that, or some sort of outsourced management of that fleet. The majority of our operational fleet is very specialized. And so there's some challenges with leasing these vehicles because of the off-road requirements, the specialized equipment and retrofits that we have to. That's one of the reasons why we have the long lead times in ordering that equipment, because they're so specialized. We have successfully rented some very generic versions of our bucket trucks that don't have all of the equipment, but have some of it. But so it's an increasing challenge, in particular with most of our fleet being specialized, but it's definitely something we will look into in terms of our general order sort of fleet.
Debt service, what's our interest rate? I'm assuming it's different for different bond issuance.
It is. I don't know each debt specific
But
interest
just
rate. It's
ballpark.
about 4%.
Okay. And I guess the next question, have we ever refinanced any of that debt or looked into it? Now is probably not the time to do
Right.
that, but
We have done that over time. There's
Okay.
definitely been refinances, absolutely.
okay,
And
so it's on your radar.
we have debt underwriter consultants that they're not on retainer, but they call every quarter,
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to make
kind of
sure
update on everything.
we're considering that along the
Yes.
way. And then who do we invest our reserves with? And do we shop the market? Are you using Leif or?
Yes.
Okay,
So great question. So we have try and put things in quite a few baskets. Several baskets, I should say. We do use Leif quite a bit, but we are now shifting a lot of our funds to the California class, which is a JPA form for special districts. I know TSD and quite a few others here regionally use them. It's another option that had better rates than Leif. So we went into that a year and a half, 2 years ago. So we used California
that's where I was heading.
class. And then we also have a fair amount of funds in UPTIF, which you may or may not have heard of, but that's basically Utah's treasury, like Leif. It's a Utah thing, and we're participating in that through our relationship with UAMPS. So UAMPS is holding money for us as kind of their reserve on us, but we do earn interest on it and get those credits back. So that's a chunk of change. Those are the primary areas of fund. And then we have some with Placer County's investment pool as well, PCIF.
Are there any restrictions for investing? In terms of like with Parks and Rec, they can't invest their own money. It's got to go through the county.
Yeah, ours are just, principal preservation first, nothing super long term, which really keeps us out of going into the longer term debt bonds and that type of things. No corporate bonds of any scope. And so individuals, I should say. And so that's all in we do have an investment policy that I need to bring back to the board kind of and refresh and go over that line by line. Sorry, paragraph by paragraph at least. And just, for awareness as well as other things that, I can look at a few other districts that have updated their policy lately and see if they've done anything that maybe we should implement. So it's pretty restrictive. I would say very restrictive. This is obviously not our money; it's the public's money, and so we try and currently Leif and Class are doing pretty well. Right at 4%, or if you will. So it's not horrible. At one time, it was 0.4, right? Not that long ago. So yeah.
Thank you, and I appreciate the thorough presentation.
You bet.
Thank you, Director Randall. To the left.
I always have something.
Courtney's back.
Yes, I'm back. Thank you.
Have
Have we received any ratepayer letters to date? Anything that's come to the PUD just regarding the process and electric rates and water rates? Of course, there's chatter on social media, but has anything come into the PUD? I haven't seen anything, but maybe I missed something.
I missed the very beginning of the question. Regarding rates, is that what the?
No, I'm just wondering, has the PUD received any written letters regarding any of the proposed rates?
Yes, we have. We have in our communication with the community on our website and some of the social or the mailers we've done to our ratepayers, directions and instructions on how to submit either a formal protest or an objection. And we're accepting those both through traditional mail and email if they have the attached signed protest or objection. We have received, I believe, somewhere around 100 of them, 125 to date.
Of protest or letters?
The majority, the overwhelming majority of those are protests.
Protest, okay.
Yes.
125, okay. And because I'm new up here, so when we've had other budgets and rate proposals, is that typical? Is that a lot? Is that not very many? Just for perspective,
It varies from rate study to rate study. The last couple of rate adjustments we've done for both water and power, particularly water, because there's a formal Prop 218 process. They've ranged anywhere from several dozen to over 100.
Okay. So depending on, okay. And then my other question, can you go to slide 61?
Maybe.
I know, I'm not sure who, Martina. Or I guess page 61.
Let me do it, Mike.
Almost there.
Oh, it's you. Okay, I wasn't sure who's,
Yeah, please. That's 64, 3, 2, 1.
there we go. Can you refresh my memory of why from fiscal year 30 to 35 that our electric and water rates go down to an increase of 3% and 3.5 from the rates that you see there from 6.5? I just can't remember why in those years, why it's down.
Okay.
I mean, that is part of the conversation looking ahead. So if our
So-
ratepayers are not liking what they see today down the
So,
line.
In these out years, these are at 50, right at the 50%, but notice how your capital goal is growing
Okay.
pretty heavily. And so at this time, again, that's pretty darn far out, but at this time, we've achieved the goal and we're beyond it. So we're moderating, we're lowering the rate increase in those out years because the compounding growth of the early rate increases is helping with those out years.
It's good planning now. Right?
100%.
Yeah, and then.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
great way of saying it.
okay.
And then similarly with water, you can see water does get there. It just, and you know, if the inflation rate, if the United States is for, sorry, I have it, so I'm not gonna. So the 5-year inflation rate for, and the 10-year for the United States is like just under 4%. But I looked at pipeline replacement and I went back 5 years ago and 10 years ago to 2025, because we do that every year. So it's a very good one, very comparable, right? And I looked at the cost per linear foot, and then you apply compound annual growth rate calculation. And for pipeline, the 5-year is 10%. So that's 10% every year, the last 5 years, pipeline costs increase per linear foot. And then the 10-year is still 6%. Way beyond 2 and 3. Does anybody remember 2 and 3% inflation? I do. It wasn't that long ago, actually. But yeah, it's not that far back where inflation, the reported federal United States inflation rate was at 1.92%. But again, pipeline, the 5-year is 10.2 and the 10-year is 6.3.
So good planning costs money, but bad planning costs a heck of a lot more money.
It can cost you much more down the road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, yes, it does take, some upfront, but
And, a
Better
glass half
decision.
full, I'll try and be glass half full because that's what I do. While those are yellow, at least there's some capital reserve. There was a time when there wasn't hardly any for water. You know, they were had so much debt service and other reasons. Maybe they held rates too low for too long. So anyway, we're gaining on it. And at the same time, every day, electric and water utility plant assets depreciate, right? And they're deteriorating. And you have to reinvest. Again, utilities are capital intensive businesses. And so if you don't reinvest and fix your water leaks and repair your pipe and upgrade your power lines, things will start falling down, and then you don't have reliable quality service, mission driven, right? So
That's all I have.
try and
Thank you.
keep it all in balance, but it does take money, unfortunately. We're aware of that, but we need to be responsible as well.
Thank you, Director Morrell.
Mike, thank you for that. Great recap of all the work you guys have been doing over the last few months. I do want to make one recommendation that as we go into some rate discussions that Director Randall brought up in the beginning of this meeting, what you just talked about, I think is extremely important about the cost of capital expenditures and the inflation rate on that versus basic inflation. I'm hearing a lot of that in the community, that our rate increases are higher than basic cost of living increases, and there's a reason for that. And that's part of it. So I think we really need to bring that to the forefront of the discussion, as well as, you know, our aggressive capital plan, which is, you know, you brought up a great slide where you basically gave us a minimum investment every year of what we need to do just to keep up, not improve,
Proof, right?
you know. And to be honest, I think we're behind already anyways. And, you know, lack of rate increases many years ago have put us in this position. I think where we're pushing the rates higher. But I think with good planning, good management, we can get past this bubble and get to those 3 or 4% that you brought up. But you know, I think there's some more education out there that's needed to really drill down as to why we need these rate increases, what they're going towards, what those costs are, not only operating costs, but capital expenditures, and what the benefit of those capital expenditures are really important to the overall discussion about rates. But I think it's a great job that you did and that you and your staff have done. So, you know, great summary, bring it all together. Really, you know, the information's there if you want to read it. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Laliotis. Yes, what everybody has said. Thank you for bringing up all of your questions and comments, board. And I want to stress that all of this, it's quite amazing what both of our utilities do, our water and electric utilities do every single day for every citizen in our community. Water and electric are really foundational. Our world is going through a tough moment right now. We have a lot of change happening. It's being reflected in things like inflation of the sorts that we're not used to, you know, as a country. These stresses are not going to go away anytime soon. They're going to get worse, right? As climate change continues to make this world hotter, make us more susceptible to drought, make us more, you know, at the mercy of catastrophic wildfire. We cannot afford to step off the gas and in any way here with what we are trying to do to mitigate and adapt to this new world that is coming, whether we like it or not right now. We need to do everything that we can to prevent catastrophic losses for this community, period. And that involves hardening our electric system. It involves making sure that our water system is reliable and it is able to withstand the stress of whatever we may be throwing at it, which we do not have the imagination to encompass. That's just human human nature. We don't think anything catastrophic can happen to us until it does. And the CTA meeting on Friday we had a speaker who lived in Paradise and was there that morning with his little baby girl in his arms. And it's really devastating. And we owe it to everybody here to help them understand what we do and why we have to pay for it. And this price is nothing compared to the infinity of the loss that may be in front of us. So thank you for really spelling it out for us. The information is here. We understand that it is vital that we have a fleet that functions, that we have pipes in the ground, that we have more hydrants, that we have hardened electrical systems that are reliable and safe. So thank you for continuing to help us understand what this puzzle looks like and how really amazing the work that you all do day in and day out for us. So thank you very much. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Can I just make one more comment, may I? Just listening to what you're saying, and it's easy to say, don't raise my rates, right? I have to budget differently. Don't raise my rates. I don't like that. No one likes that. And we have to change behavior when costs go up, and we don't like to change behavior, right? So when you say, oh, well, this is improving fire safety. Oh, I like that. Yeah, I like that. And my water tastes great. Oh, yeah, I like that too. And my water pressure. And oh, if there's fire, oh, yeah, we have the added hydrants. Oh, I like that. I want that. Oh, my power's on and all these storms. Oh, yeah, I like that. Keep that up. That's a good thing. And so people want that too. And those things cost money, and to keep it up and to keep up the infrastructure and to keep up with the times and to make up for maybe poor decisions in the past, keeping rates down, and so deferring those costs and maintenance going forward. So I'm in favor of keeping up, if not, better planning. But, at the end of the day, people like those things. It's hard to say, oh, they cost money and we have to pay for them. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, yeah, I want all that. So there's a cost to that. It's very clear. I think the clarity in this presentation is terrific. It's probably a lot for ratepayers to digest, but certainly on the board level, I think it's great in the details. So it's easy to say, well, okay, let's not raise anything, but at the same time, we have a duty to do what we need to do going forward. So this is just some of my observations, and then hearing what my fellow directors are saying. So I just wanted to add a little commentary there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything else they want to add? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you so much once again for that thorough presentation. And with that, that was the end of our agenda tonight. So I think that we can adjourn. Thank you all for your time and your efforts.